Welcome back. Let's Get Physical Therapy is an educational podcast brought to you by MedStar Health and hosted by me, physical therapist Becca Schumer. I will be sharing the mic with tons of healthcare professionals with the goal of educating and inspiring fellow PTs and future PTs. We hope you find this both informative and inspirational, ultimately optimizing how we treat our patients and grow as professionals. Please enjoy today's episode. Today on the pod, we've got Dr. Aubrey Harrison. He was born and raised in Chicago and is a recent grad of the George Washington University, which is where I spent 7 years of my life. So I'm particularly excited to hear that he went there. So raise high. He's a postdoctoral fellow and psychology associate within MedStar Georgetown University Hospital's WISE Center. In his role, he supports students, families, teachers, and school leaders by providing direct service, consultation, and community support. He has worked with children, families, and adults in a variety of settings over the past 7 years, which includes social service agencies and inpatient and outpatient hospital settings. I'm grateful to Dr. Harrison for spending some time with us today. We dive into a lot of different aspects of what it means to have good mental health and to work on our mental health to be better humans overall. Let's jump into it. Dr. Harrison, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing well. I am very excited to host you today to continue on with our May being Mental Health Awareness Month and spreading the good word and hopefully going to impact somebody or some bodies out there.
Yeah, so excited for this.
I love hearing people's stories. So I want to know how you got into this field.
Yeah. So, I always wanted to be a psychologist or work in some way, shape, or form in psychology. And as I started just like advancing through high school and college, I noticed that friends, family, even sometimes strangers were just gravitating towards me and telling me all of their problems or all of the things that they were dealing with. And I felt like I had the solutions, but I wasn't trained to really give them the solutions that might help. But I knew that like in my heart of hearts, it was there. And so, watching that and watching, the people that look like me feeling like they didn't actually have mental health individuals. And I'm an African-American male, so those that can't really see me right now, I'll name that. But, I think for those that couldn't see me, it was really important to have someone like me in the field. And I pursued this to be that face and to really support that narrative of like, it's okay to talk about your feeling. It's okay to talk about what you're going through. And there's all these different avenues that you can use to really heal. And this is one of them. And I'll be that person that helps you get there and like rides in the car with you and goes on that journey.
Hearing that story, it sounds like you, please correct me if I'm wrong, you had the space and the environment to feel those things. Well, I know a lot of others don't or are shown like you're a male. So showing an image of masculinity and hiding your feelings. How did that not happen to you? How did you not get sucked into that?
Yeah. Man, this is a good question. Because for me, I would say my parents, they did a really good job of normalizing talking about emotions. But the funny thing is that society didn't do a great job. So I always felt like I was battling against what society told me I should be and what my parents are telling me is like okay in the home. And so I was grappling with that and I was testing it out and experimenting like, hey, can I tell you about my feelings real quick? Or, hey, it's okay that you're not feeling okay. But that felt kind of like uneasy at times. But I went on my own journey to normalize it as well of like, if this is what my parents are saying in the home, then I need to actually accept that outside of the home and that will be okay. So.
The word that comes to my mind is like living authentically, not trying to mold yourself into what society wants you to be or thinks you should be because of the color of your skin or the sex that you are.
Right. Yeah. Live your truth, right? And live as who you are. It's hard. Like that is something that is hard that I think people struggle with every day. But the more that you like allow yourself to do that, the easier life becomes at times. And I've found that over time for myself. So
Where would you suggest someone starts if they feel like they're trying to live up to expectations that aren't their own, or they're living more externally and trying to get that validation versus living truer to their values? Where's a good place for someone to start accessing that?
yeah, honestly, some people may say this is like controversial or things like that, but I think today social media has actually been beneficial when it comes to like having something to go to see what other people are thinking. And so for me, that's one step that I like to tell people that is like almost the easiest accessible piece is going online or using social media platforms to look up things that you really find that you're dealing with. So whether it's like how to be authentically myself, there are people who are like talking about that, right? If it's like, you know, I show up as a Black man every day at my job and there's all these things that come against me, there's someone out there talking about it. And I think that has been so helpful in seeing that. And then also, I think just kind of the blanket of issues that we all deal with, right? Like mental health is about being mentally healthy, just like physical health is about being physically healthy. So if we are focusing on how do I become mentally healthy, then I just got to find the tools of like, yeah, I might feel a little bit of depression today, or I might feel anxious today. I might feel angry today. But what's out there to help me figure out some coping tools and strategies to really support that?
Yeah, so what I hear you saying is normalizing that we're all going to experience these negative emotions, and we're not born with the tools knowing how to do so. So it's okay to seek these other resources, be it social media or seeing a professional like yourself to learn the tools to navigate our crazy lives.
Definitely.
Well,
I 100% agree.
what are some yellow flags that, as clinic, again, like this podcast is geared towards PT students, healthcare field. What are some yellow flags that we can identify in ourselves when maybe we're getting close to maybe needing a little more assistance? Like in PT, pain is like a signal. It's like our body's warning signal. What is our mental signals that tells us, maybe something's going on that I should pay attention to?
Yeah. I often tell people that there's like three or four things that you can really pay attention to. One of those is your sleep pattern. So if you are noticing that your sleep is changing, and even in that, like maybe you feel a little restless at night, or you're not sleeping as long at night because you have so much going through your mind, like your thoughts are racing. That's a sign that, like, something's going on right now. And especially if that's happening like for longer than like a day or a couple of days, it's important to pay attention. When you feel fatigued, and so when it feels like, do I really want to get out of bed today? And it's not just because I had a really hard workout, right? Or I ran, 1,000 miles or, things like that. But that like I'm mentally taxed, like I feel weighted down, like my brain is heavy and I just can't move or feel like it's harder to move. That's like the second sign, I think. The third, like yellow flag that I think people need to pay attention to is, and this is both for friends who are thinking about their, people who are in their nebulous, and also like the individual, the person that might be experiencing it, is are you kind of like isolating yourself, or are you seeing friends isolating themselves? And like that's something to pay attention to, because that is a sign that something has changed in their lives. And they're trying to figure out how to deal with it. And we need someone to check up on us. So those are kind of like a few things that I would think of as like the yellow flags that we should be paying attention to and focusing on.
A lot of us work in clinics with multiple physical therapists, a lot of team members. How can we be supportive of our team members if we're noticing sort of like Johnny's looking a little burnt out? Instead of saying, "Hey, Johnny, pick up the slack, like, let's go." What are ways that we can be supportive of each other and create that nice work environment?
Yeah. I think what's really important is that we begin to humanize each other. And so, that statement that you just said, like, hey, Johnny, pick up the slack, right? That takes out every other aspect of who Johnny is. And it's just like, you must work. And instead, what we could say is, hey, Johnny, what's going on? How are you doing? How are you feeling? And even acknowledging, hey, I'm noticing that like this week seems a little bit harder for you. Is there any way that I can help or support you? Just those statements change the whole landscape for a person, often because no one is asking them those questions. And that's the part of like feeling humanized and normalizing that, like, it's okay not to be okay. And it's okay to ask for help. And maybe you don't feel like you can ask for help, but I'm going to ask you so that you feel like you have a door that's open to ask for
It's funny you say that because I think I already titled this podcast, "It's Okay to Not Be Okay."
help.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
I think as PTs, we're naturally caregivers and we care so much for our patients. And I don't want us to miss caring for each other either.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is like I think therapists, psychologists, clinicians, PTs, all of that, like in our field, nurses, doctors, right? We work so hard for our patients to the point that we lose sight of like what we need for ourselves and what our team needs for each other. And so sometimes we do have to take that step back. Um, and if you know that it's going to be a busy week, you just know this, saying that like, oh, I feel like this is going to be a busy week. Do you think it's going to be a busy week? And if someone else is like, no, I don't think it is, great. Well, I might lean on you a little bit more because I'm already feeling it, right? And that creates this community that we need every single day, that we show up for work or the things that are our obligations.
Yeah. I like that image, like ebbing and flowing. We can't all be at 100% all the time. So you might be at 80 and I might be at 20, and we
Right.
kind of bring ourselves up to 100 together.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. How about imposter syndrome? We haven't really touched on that in any of our podcasts yet. Can you tell me what that is and how that might look like?
Yeah. So, the best way that I find to describe imposter syndrome is someone who is extremely qualified for whatever they're positioned to do. Um, and often they don't feel like they are qualified and they feel like they're showing up in a space as less than. So they feel like an imposter in this space. And, I can touch on it personally. Um, I remember going through my entire PhD program to get my PhD and feeling like every step of the way that I was an imposter for multiple reasons. One, there weren't people that looked like me. Black males are, I think the statistic is like 0.8% of psychologists are Black
Okay.
males. Crazy, right?
Yeah.
So knowing that, and then stepping into a space where I didn't feel like I could really be my authentic self, it felt like I was an imposter because I felt like, are people going to think I'm stupid? Are people going to actually take me serious? Do they know that like I can actually show up in that space? I will even say that I still deal with it now. I'm going to normalize it, right? Because still being in the role that I have, I continue to think about these things like, okay, when I show up today, are people going to take me serious? Well, yeah, I went through all these years in school, so they should, but like I still question it and wonder if it's okay. And that's where I like have to talk to friends and like my family who like remind me like, you've been doing this for a long time, right?
Hmm. Does that go away eventually? Or is there positive self talk you can do to yourself to remind yourself that, yeah, you did do all those amazing things to get to where you are? Does that ever go away, or is it always sort of like present?
So I think that it's always present, but the voice gets quieter. So I can't say that it ever goes away, only because I think for people, a lot of times the voice is so loud initially that as you bring in the village to drown out that voice, then you realize it's kind of tucked in the back. And it's always kind of there because you are always stepping into new spaces. That's why I say like it's going to be there. But as you step into new places, you still have that village that continues to silence that voice or make it a little bit quieter for you so that you can say, hey, like I'm meant to be here. It's okay for me to be here. And I'm going to show up and let these people know that, like, hey, I'm qualified. Right.
How do you not self handicap yourself and not let that limit your abilities to grow?
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. It's really tough to do that. And that's why I say having that village or the community around you,
Hmm.
because that's how you don't like you, those are the crutches that you need. Right. Because sometimes you are going to fall down and then you have the people that pick you back up to support you. So
Hmm. Work life balance. What does work life balance mean? Is this some thing that we can ever attain? Is it always kind of like just depends on the day where the moon is that night? Like, what is work life balance, and how can we get maybe a little closer to it?
um, I think work life balance, to me, it means very different things to different people. Um, but in practice, it is about what is work balance and what is life balance. And when you can blend the two, you really have that work life balance, right? And so the reason I separate it is because sometimes we may feel balance in our life, but work doesn't fully feel balanced. And so I'm trying to figure out like, how do I do this right? And then that throws off life and vice versa, right? And so we have to understand what's actually happening that helps us feel great in a job and helps us feel great in our lives. And then what do I need to get closer to those things, right? So some people love going into the office, like love it, right? And it's what they want to do. And some people hate it. um, right? And some people need a mix, right?
Hmm.
But like that's how we know. And there's some companies who are like requiring people to return, right? And that feels really difficult because if it wasn't a requirement but an option, then you're actually allowing people to say like, I love coming in and so let's do this and I want to connect. And then other people were like, it's easier for me to be home. And that's my work-life balance. So
Hmm. There's going to be periods of time where work is going to be a little crazy, like what you were talking about earlier. And how can we expand upon our, I guess, our life balance to add to our toolbox or figure things out that do bring us back down when we are stressed out from work and preventing getting burnt out from that?
yeah. Um I'm a big believer in that we should have multiple things that we're doing for ourselves, and really tapping into focusing on the things that are meaningful for us in our lives. And so when work gets crazy, because it does, let's acknowledge that, right? Um, when work gets crazy, we need those supports and those outlets. So the tools are really figuring out what those activities or aspects of your life that pour back into you, what those are. Um, there's a ton of resources online that there's like a pleasurable activities list, because I've actually had clients who are like, I don't know what it is and I don't know where to begin. So I give them a list and I say, try to knock out a quarter of this list. And it's things that they would never think to try. But then they try it and like, oh, pottery was actually pretty fun.
Hmm.
Right? Or going outside for a walk actually felt pretty good. And I would have never done it because I didn't think of doing that. Um, Connecting with friends, and because we're in more of a virtual world, like going on Zoom, right? Or doing a FaceTime. Those are the things that I think are very meaningful because then we start to gather these tools that we can pull out at a specific time and say, work feels crazy and I haven't really engaged with anyone who's given me anything positive. So I need to talk to some friends, right? Or work feels crazy because I've been doing these 5 specific things and I feel like pottery or drawing or journaling is going to take me out of that, right? Those are things that I think help.
Yeah, talking personally, I think it's very dependent upon the situation, right? Like if I'm in clinic running around all day long, then maybe going for a 3-mile hike is not the best idea, and I will choose to draw. I love to draw.
Right.
Or if I've been sitting at the computer doing stuff all day long, then doing a sit still activity might not be what I need to de-stress, but getting outside in nature and getting that vitamin D and all of that. Yeah, it's I can speak to building that toolbox is so important.
Yeah.
Do you think part of the issue with not like you see that list of 100 pleasurable activities that we could possibly do you think people are fearful of not being great at doing something and that stop like limits them from trying to do something, an activity that might actually be amazing for them and that they might actually love?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a part of it. And I think they're also scared of trying something new. So it's like the fear of like, I won't be good at it. And also the fear of like, is this even going to feel good? Is this going to like help that one thing that I'm feeling? Um, but one of the biggest things we know with depression is that behavioral activation, which is like doing something, like actually changing the environment, creates better outcomes for people. And so when people actually try something and move towards it, even if it feels like I'm not going to be good at it or I don't even know, they often are surprised because it's like, wow, that was actually more fun than I had thought it would be. Or I didn't like it, but like I saw something that along the way that I actually did like.
And A for effort.
Right. Truly
Yep.
in it forever.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
feel like I should speak for myself. I feel like I can get stuck in my ways and get comfortable doing the things that I do. So I've been pushing and challenging myself to try new things lately, and it's been fun.
Right.
Again, you never know what you're going to discover, what you're good at or what you enjoy, and you'll find things that don't work, and you'll be glad you try those. You can knock those off the list and keep building.
Right. Keep building. And it's like a little bucket list, right? Like a bucket list that you didn't know you needed.
Hmm. Hmm.
Full of things that you would have never thought to try. So, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Bringing us back to more PT in the clinic, working with patients, how can we work with our patients to help them understand the connection between the mind and the body, that when we're going through injuries, that it's not just a physical thing, but how we think about it, how we perceive our pain and believe in our ability to get better? How does that impact recovery?
Yeah. So I'm going to get nerdy for a second and then I'll bring it back down. Um, a lot of times I tell people that like we have first almost 33,000 thoughts a day, maybe a little more than that. And with those 33,000 thoughts, we have synapses that are firing all those thoughts, right? So that's just in the brain. Um, and our brain is connected to our body. And so that this brain that we have in our head that like helps our limbs move and helps us understand pain and when we should be switching on one leg or um, honoring what our body is telling us, that this big massive thing that we hold inside our head is what keeps us going. And that is the epitome of mind body connection, right? So when I like bring it back down for people, I'm often saying to them, if we're just focusing on the physical and the pain that you might be experiencing, how come we're not connecting it back to the thoughts that we're having or what we have been experiencing throughout the day that helps change how we're feeling or what we're perceiving, right? Um, and I think those are the most important pieces that are so necessary for people to see and understand. The other piece that I think it can be helpful is if I told someone And, for anybody that's listening, if I said, you know, what's something that's red in your room right now? You'd immediately start looking around and trying to find the red thing, right? And then if I said, don't look for the red thing, you'd be like, because you're still trying to find the red thing, right?
It's for me, it's the leave button. So don't tempt me.
Yeah, same with me, right? But I think that's like, if we think of it that way, if I'm thinking about, especially in PT, I have this injury, or like, for me, knee, right? Like I used to do shot put and discus in high school and stuff like that. So a lot of, you know, things going on with the leg and stuff like that, but a small knee injury, things like that. So when I feel that pain and I'm focusing on it, you know, sometimes I'm more focused on that pain versus what did I do throughout the day and how did I feel throughout the day that impacted me, that connected to how my knee is experiencing this. And so it could be that, yeah, like I ran a lot or I was moving around a lot, right? But also maybe I've been feeling really down or really negative today, or having more negative thoughts. And so the pain is actually exacerbated, more than it was yesterday because I've been so focused on what's been going on, mentally.
With those 33,000 plus or minus a couple thousand thoughts that pop in and out of our heads, what percentage of those are negative thoughts? And why do those negative thoughts just take on so much power and override the positive ones?
Yeah. So I don't know the full percentage, but I would say majority, but oftentimes what we see is majority of our thoughts are actually more negative than they are positive. And we really have to do a intentional job of trying to put in more positive thoughts. One of the reasons I say that we think more negative thoughts, and this is my own kind of like speculation hypothesis, we live in a society that pushes negative thoughts, and pushes kind of negative information on us a lot more. And so if you think about it, like when you open your phone, in the morning, what are you actually seeing? You're seeing news headlines. A lot of times, things that like aren't going well in the world. Sometimes you might look in your room and you might say like I should have cleaned this today, or I don't have time to cook breakfast, or did I get gas last night, right? Like, so you're almost automatically thinking about the negative. And the way to really combat that is to start switching like how you're starting the day. There's a really important piece of like, it takes 5 positive thoughts to counteract 1 negative thought. And so within that, I think it's so important to like acknowledge that we have to, again, be very intentional about that process and push it in a way that's like, okay, I'm starting my day off with positive attributes or positive, like, motivational ideas and affirmations that like support me. I'm going to kill it today, right? Like, I'm ready to like knock this day out, or like, you're amazing, right? Yesterday was tough, but today is going to be better. All these things help us to actually feel better because our mind is preparing to do something positive.
I read a book a long time ago about making your bed and like winning the day, starting off the day with a win.
Yeah.
Is this kind of like working a muscle? Like, if we practice doing this skill, does it get better? Does it get easier? Will the thoughts subside, or do we just get better at fighting them?
Um,
Or not fighting them, acknowledging they exist and then counteracting them.
right. I think it's a both and. So it definitely is that we become more aware of our negative thoughts, and then we're better equipped to address them over time. We are also better at allowing ourselves to experience happiness, and joy. Dopamine is released when like pleasure, is experienced, and so we start to actually change that brain chemistry to more pleasurable things the more that we flex that muscle. So like, one example I have, working with several clients, I've told them, give me a week, just give me 1 week where you wake up and you have your affirmations on your mirror, or your journaling affirmations, or you're telling yourself a couple of positive things. And tell me from today to the end of the week how your mood has changed, and to have them actually like record it, right? And what's so interesting is that they get to the end of the week, and regardless if they've had some bad things happen, they actually are reporting higher rates of like positivity and happiness. And that to me is like I literally say, like, I didn't do that. You did it. I just gave you the tool of you're allowing your mind to think more positive things and of becoming aware.
I started probably 6 or 7 years ago. Before I go to bed, I write three things I'm grateful for.
Mm.
And some days it's easier, some days it's harder. But I can tell you that I find happiness in the simplest things. And sometimes it's annoying. I'm like, look at that cloud. It's beautiful. But I mean, I think when it's kind of like the red color, looking for the red color. It's like looking for those little things that can bring joy to your life versus perseverating on the negative or looking for negative things to reinforce what we're thinking or feeling.
Exactly. Yeah. My favorite saying from my grandma is, and my mom kind of passed it down as well, is look for the blessing in the day. And that has been so pivotal for me because even when I'm having a bad day, I looked for the thing that was good. And the way she would say it is like, even if it's the smallest thing. So I could blink. I can move my mouth. I can flex my fingers, right? I just woke up and could see, right? My heart is still beating. Just those things that like sometimes we just have to like be very, very specific and kind of like simple about it. That even helps to shift it because it's like, okay, that's something that's good regardless of like what's going on, but at least I can acknowledge that like, yeah, I got one thing.
Yeah, I think we take for granted all these little things. It's easier to overlook what we have and what our bodies are able to do
Right.
until we can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Last thing I want to touch on is, I guess, presence or mindfulness. What does that mean to be present? Why is that important to work on being present in our lives and not thinking too much about the past or the future and just being where we are, being where our feet are?
Yeah. It is extremely important because if we're in the past, we're losing out on what's happening in the now. And if we're in the future, we are so focused on what's happening that we can't predict that we really aren't acknowledging what we're doing again in the now. And so I think that's the biggest piece about mindfulness is acknowledging you at the present moment at this time, and whatever thoughts are happening, you're allowing yourself to hold those thoughts and then let them continue to move on. Because when we focus on the past, it's all the things that again are in the past. We can't change them. We can't. And sometimes they affect us. But even with that, it's like I still have to acknowledge who I am at this present time so that I can keep moving forward. And a lot of times when we focus on the things in the future, I often acknowledge that as like anxiety, because we're just like kind of like anxious moments for ourselves because a lot of times we're worried about what's going to happen in the future. And so we miss out on, man, like this actually was pretty great right now. And that's what I needed. So I think that's for me, that's what mindfulness is and why it's important, because then we can actually begin to also remember the positive moments that were in our lives and the positive moments that we want to have in our lives as well.
Forget who told me about this, but if I have a talk or a presentation or something coming up and people are like, "Are you worried about it? Like, are you anxious about it?" And I'm like, I don't want to waste my time worrying about what could be or what might not be. Because what if I get there and it's great and then I wasted all that time worrying about that?
Yeah.
So that's been
Yeah.
helpful for me.
Yeah. We, this is one stat that I wish we could figure out. How many what ifs do we have a day? Because those what ifs often like hinder us from being the best that we can because we're going through every scenario
Hmm.
instead of being like, I have a presentation and I might rock it out. So just try, right? And
Hmm.
if you don't, wow, like next time I'm gonna do better, right?
Yep.
But at least I didn't allow everything to get in my way to like make it even worse than what I thought it could be.
Awesome. Dr. Harrison, this has been an amazing conversation. It's been jam-packed full of really good, helpful hints and gems for people. I hope everyone takes something away. But as we start to round up, what is your favorite quote? What moves you? What drives you? I know you shared a quote from your grandmother, but any other
Yeah.
quotes you want to share with us?
Yeah, I think kind of hinging on the last piece that we just talked about, like mindfulness, one of my favorite quotes is by Marcus Buckingham. It's the best way to find out whether you're on the right path is to stop looking at the path. And so it's really being in the present to see what's happening in your life. Um, Stop looking down, look up, focus on what you are moving towards. Start connecting that physical to the mental to understand like, wow, there's so much beauty, there's so much greatness that I have within myself to get to, and I'll get there.
Amazing. Any words of wisdom, being that it's Mental Health Awareness Month, anything you want to put out there as a last call to action?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's really important to understand that like if you do feel like you are suffering and going through something, that there are therapists and just mental health professionals that are out there that really want to help you. And it's so important to understand that like we in psychology and in mental health don't feel like it's a one size fits all. And so whether it's talk therapy, whether it's group therapy, whether it's journaling, whatever, there's so many avenues. But reach out and really try to equip yourself with the best toolbox that you can get so that you can live your best life for yourself.
Amazing. Where can people find you?
People can find me. I'm in the Department of Psychiatry at MedStar Health. I work with the Y Center, and so you all can find me there. I'm also on Instagram at the Therapy Brother. So check.
Mm, all right.
Yeah.
Will do. Dr. Harrison, thank you so much for your time. This has been awesome. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Let's Get Physical Therapy podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram at MedStar Health PT. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please give us a 5-star rating and leave a review so we can reach more listeners just like you. As always, we appreciate your time and hope you join us for our next episode.